My name is Peter Baldus. I just took over as the chair of painting and printmaking, the VCUarts painting and printmaking department. This is my first professional public thing, so hopefully it works. But I want to welcome everyone, and we're very excited today to welcome Nikolas Goodich I'm already messing up my script here. We're here to welcome Nikolas. Nikolas Soren Goodich currently lives in Los Angeles, is a graduate of VCUarts, having earned his BFA in painting and printmaking in 2019. Last year, Nikolas had the honor of delivering a TED Talk at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Media Lab during TEDx's Boston's inaugural planetary stewardship event. His talk focused on his nearly 10-year journey of recovery from addiction and explored the lessons he learned during recovery, lessons which he believes can offer solutions to our shared social woes and the man-made climate crisis we are in the midst of. Today, Nikolas will delve deeper into this topic, expanding upon the interconnection between recovery from addiction and the need to build stronger communities, emphasizing the pivotal role of public art in this process. Through his personal experiences and artistic journey, Nikolas will guide us through a thought-provoking exploration of addiction, recovery, and the transformative power of art. Nikolas's narrative is one of resilience, introspection, and the ability to overcome the darkest moments in life. Through his artwork and his vision for public art, he offers us a path towards community, connection, and healing. Please join me in welcoming Nikolas Soren Goodich to the stage.
Hello. So let's see, make sure that our technical stuff is all ready. And thank you so much for coming. It's really beautiful to see you all here. Where we all live. So first, we must acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Monacan, Mattaponi, Pamunkey, and Powhatan peoples, and also pay our respects to 21 generations of Black people, free and enslaved, who are living or who have lived in and around this city, in this state, and in this country since the first enslaved Africans were brought to North America, to Virginia in 1619. I'm Nikolas Soren Goodich, as you already know. Hello. And you know I've graduated from with a BFA in painting and printmaking from VCUarts in 2019. As Peter shared with you, I was very honored to give a TED Talk last year in Boston at MIT. And it was part of this planetary stewardship event. So the climate crisis was the focus, and there was a range of truly amazing scientists and activists and artists from all over the world. And so it was humbling to be able to learn from them and share my story with them. As Peter also said, my talk focused on the fact that I'm 10 years into recovery from drug addiction and homelessness. And I talked about how the lessons that I've learned can really help us overcome toxic behaviors of all kinds, including those that are so obviously responsible for creating and feeding the man-made climate crisis. I also shared how I believe that a socially engaged public art can offer physical contexts for people to come together and recognize and challenge and change those toxic behaviors, as well as so many other toxic behaviors that we must choose to confront as individuals, as families, as communities, as nations, and ultimately as a species. Today, I'll be expanding upon the talk that I gave in Boston and linking recovery from addiction more directly with the necessity to choose to build stronger communities, and how I believe public art can play a vital role. Oh, just a second, there's already a technical difficulty. Let's make this work. Okay, so yeah, that was what was in Boston. Have you ever been homeless? Anyone? Well, I have. And honestly, it was without a doubt the most traumatic experience of my life. I lost my home and I was forced to live out on the streets. I slept in homeless shelters, on sidewalks, at bus stops, in city parks. To understand why this happened, I want to tell you some things about myself and about my life before that nightmare. I was born in Los Angeles in 1969, and I had a rather unique childhood. I grew up in both the urban sprawl of LA and on a small farm in South Dakota, also living outside of Charlottesville, off and on since the early 80s. I'm proudly mixed race and multicultural. My grandfather, William, was the grandson of a previously enslaved Baptist preacher from Alabama. William was Bill, everyone called him Bill. Bill was a soul singer in California in the 1950s, among other jobs that he did. My other grandfather is also named William. William, known as Willie, fled genocidal pogroms in Ukraine with his mother Sarah in 1911 to find a safe refuge in New York City. He went on to be a respected, highly respected leader in union labor movements. He was a radical labor activist. My great-grandmother, Maud, Bill's mother, taught elementary school in Monroe, California. In the 1930s, she successfully fought a legal battle to have quality public schools built for students of color, for her own children, her extended family, and for her community in the 1930s. Also in the 1930s, my Jewish grandmother, Sylvia, worked in the racially integrated theater productions in New York City that were part of FDR's New Deal Work Progress Administration's federal theater project. My family is a rainbow. We are Black, we are white, we are Jewish, we're Christians, we're atheists, we are recent immigrants. We have been here since the 1700s. We are LGBTQIA+, we are hetero. We're painters, sculptors, writers, carpenters, teachers, members of unions, students, small business owners, managers, high school principals, bank tellers, bus drivers, preachers, scholars, gardeners, farmers, chefs. My family is a rainbow. We've lived all over the United States, on the West and the East Coasts, in the South, in the Midwest, and all over the world, in Israel, in the UK, in Europe, in Africa. My family is a rainbow. I've lived all across the United States, and also in Canada and London and Berlin. After many years living in Providence, Boston, New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, and Charlottesville, I ended up back in LA in 1999. I've been a visual artist and musician my whole life. So throughout the aughts in Los Angeles, I exhibited my paintings, performed my music, and I worked as an art handler and a head preparator at some of LA's most prestigious art galleries and museums. I was married to a French woman, a very talented musician, and together we fronted an indie rock band, releasing albums and playing shows with bands that we loved from all over the world. We belonged to a community, a real community of diverse artists and musicians, and actors and writers and activists and performers. In so many ways, it was everything I'd ever dreamed of as an artist and what I was hoping for my adult life from very young age. And I I had a really good life. But by 2011, I had been divorced for a few years. I was fighting severe depression. I was unemployed, and I lost the lease on my apartment. Yeah, that happens to people, you know, you deal with it, you figure it out. But I was almost completely broke. And I had to put everything I owned, everything I had into storage. I was basically homeless, you know, for the first time in my life. Friends would let me sleep on their couches, on their floors. And honestly, it was bad. It was actually really bad. Yeah, hey, of course I kept trying to fix it, to find a job, to get an apartment, to rent a room, anything, somehow fix it, but I couldn't. I could not get it together. My life was a mess. And then, then things got much worse. In the summer of 2013, I hit rock bottom. Suddenly, I was left with no other choice but to live on the streets. I had zero money, none. I had nowhere to live, nowhere I could stay. And that was the start of a nightmare that lasted a whole year, an entire year. That year, maybe once if I was lucky, somehow I would scrape together enough cash to stay in a cheap motel, like one night, the cheapest motel that I could find. But the rest of the month, I'd sleep on the sidewalk, in a park, in an alley, or in front of this church in Venice, California, near the beach, that allowed me to sleep on their steps, those right there, those steps, if I kept them clean and if I left very early in the morning. Then I would just wander the streets. I would wander around the city. Just a minute, excuse me. Oh, yeah. I'd wander around the city. And I had nothing to do. I had nowhere to go. Eating, getting water, finding a bathroom, taking a shower. These are like simple things, right, that we all take for granted. This is our normal lives. We take them for granted every day. They're part of our sane, normal worlds. But for me, then, they were never a certainty at all. Never. And it was a social death. I felt invisible. I felt erased. It was a nightmare. Before that, I had a relatively normal life, a good life. I had my family. I had my wife, my friends, a job, a home, a car, my creative life as an artist and a musician. I had a normal life. And then that good life went right off the rails. I was lost. I lost my connection to people. I lost my connection, my sense of being part of any community. So why did this happen to me? What happened? Well, in the summer of 2001, I chose to start smoking crystal meth. And that was the stupidest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. She knows. I started smoking crystal methamphetamine and I could not stop. I did not stop for 13 years. For 13 years, I smoked crystal meth night and day, if I could get it. Convinced that my life was perfect, that everything was great. I mean, I'm not kidding. I really believed that. I was totally delusional. Crystal methamphetamine fed my ego this daily dose of lies. That drug, it tricked my brain, tricked me into believing that I was special, that I'd found this easy way to cheat the normal cycle of life, that I could stay awake for days, for a whole week. I mean, like, for a whole week, every single day, all day, 24 hours. I mean, insane. And I would never have to pay for it ever. I was an addict, and I was delusional. Looking back, it was so clearly wrong what I did, what I allowed to happen, what I let happen to me, the things I chose to think, what I chose to do, the way I was living my life. Addiction, delusion, denial. How many of us here are addicts? Thank you. Thank you. How many of us here are addicted to alcohol, prescription or illegal drugs, to shopping, gambling, sugar, food, video games, sex? How many of us are addicted to toxic substances, toxic behaviors, toxic ideas, toxic people? Well, let's be brutally honest. How about everyone? I can offer one glaring example. We've all known for decades that burning fossil fuels produces highly toxic chemical pollutants that cause cancers, that play a major role in the destruction of our atmosphere, and that are feeding man-made climate change. Has knowing these facts stopped very many of us from driving gas-powered vehicles? No, not including myself. Now, we know that the EV revolution, is here. It was dreamed of for a long time, but it's here. But in 2023, the percentage of electric vehicles on the road is 2.2%. So we're obviously decades away from the ability to choose to comprehensively replace fossil fuels with electricity from renewable sources, green power. This summer, the Energy Policy Institute at the University of Chicago released a report outlining the health effects of global vehicle, industrial, and wildfire emissions. And they found that in North America, the life expectancy is reduced on average by 2.5 years, and that in some parts of Asia, it's reduced by a decade from air pollution alone. We all know that these toxic emissions, they literally only exist because of our choices, our actions. So are we individually or as a community, a society, are we in control? Or are we allowing ourselves to be controlled by these and other toxic substances and their related technologies? This was about choice. Choice, agency, free will. And we know these are the very things that addiction denies us. So are we even aware that we're addicted? How addicted we are? What we're addicted to, and what those addictions are doing to us, to our planet. So these are exactly the kinds of questions I should have asked myself when meth addiction took over my life, when my life was so obviously being destroyed day after day by the grotesque effects of this drug. Denial, delusion, addiction. I really didn't think then, a decade ago, homeless, high on meth, lost, that I could ever find a way back to rebuild my life, to recover, to even really get the chance to recover from this nightmare I'd so obviously allowed to happen to me. But I did. On June 18th, 2014, with the help of my father and with the help of Music Cares, an amazing organization that helps professional musicians suffering from alcoholism and addiction, I got off the streets and into this rehab facility, the Claire Foundation in Santa Monica, California. I got into recovery. And I was very lucky. In rehab, they told me that 8 out of 10 alcoholics and addicts never recover. They relapse again and again. They go to prison. They end up living or dying on the streets. 8 out of 10. So I'm 9.5 years clean and sober now. And it was in recovery that I learned that you can heal, that we can heal from years, even decades of drug abuse, of addiction to irrational behavior patterns. We can heal from the disease of addiction to toxic substances, to toxic ways of being, to obsessions with toxic behaviors, to toxic ideas. How? Well, it's actually rather simple. By looking at ourselves, by looking at who we were before our addictions took hold, who we were during our addictions, and who we are now. To know ourselves, choosing to know ourselves intimately with rigorous honesty. Choice. Recovery, it's something that one has to choose over the toxic beliefs and toxic behaviors that got us where we were. All addicts are in denial. I was in denial, deep denial. And it's a form of delusion. And attachment to delusions only leads to the erosion of one's ability to make rational choices, to discern what is right from what is wrong. It takes courage to refuse to live in denial, to refuse to allow irrational choices to dominate how you live your life. Crystal meth destroyed my ability to make rational choices. That's what happened. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we have a universal prayer, the Serenity Prayer. I'd never heard it before entering rehab, but once I understood it, what it meant, it became my mantra. And I understood how it could help me to begin to learn how to overcome that underlying psychological disease that was behind my addictions, behind the toxic behaviors that had destroyed my life. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Serenity, courage, and wisdom. This set of essential ideas, these phrases, this simple prayer, it became central to my life, to how I was able to learn how to recover, to learn how to heal, how to rebuild my life, to build a new, decent life, and to learn how to work to fix the mess I'd left in my wake, to make amends, to recover. To recover is to find again. Recovery is to reconnect to who we really are, who we've wanted to be, and to learn how to choose to try to be the best us that we can. The truest me is I'm an artist. I always have been. As a child, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. Growing up, maybe I didn't quite fit into what I perceived to be the normal world, but that was okay because I had art, this seemingly infinite cornucopia of creative potential, inspiring me to know more, to want to know more and more about the world. Art always felt like it was this sublime, private superpower that filled me with a passionate, evolving connection to others, to history, to ideas, to our shared humanity. When I encountered alienation, confusion, trauma, art was always there to help me to gain perspective, to find new ways of seeing, of being, ways to heal myself, to be connected. Addiction to meth destroyed all of that. But in recovery, I have reconnected to art, to my art, to the world, to my best self. In the first year that I was clean and sober, I lived in a sober living facility in Los Angeles. That year, I went from 4 to 6 Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous meetings every single day. And it was in those rooms that I learned what addiction really is and how I could actually do the hard work necessary to begin to heal. I was on meth for 13 years. And I was also addicted to marijuana and cigarettes for over 30 years. So it's no surprise that it took me more than 2 years to regain some semblance of sanity and normality, equilibrium, clarity. Once I felt sane again, I knew I had to go back to school and finish the degree that I had begun in 1987. And 30 years later, that brought me here to Richmond, to VCU, to VCUarts. Here, focused, I used to say like a laser on my education because I had a lot of time to make up. I felt an urgency. And on applying the lessons I learned in my recovery, I really began to feel like I was part of a community again, a community of artists and teachers, the students from the other schools in the university, people in Richmond. And it was a feeling I had lost. Connections I developed here, along with what I was learning in my classes, really nurtured a spark that developed into my success as a student. I was like, I have to get all A's. I have to get all A's. Close. And then after graduation, into my newly focused studio practice. The body of work that I've been making since graduating in 2019 focuses on the profile portrait as an archetypal symbol. These are fluid identities, open to all genders, races, classes, nationalities, and ages. I use this symbolic profile portrait form as a sign that's intended to allow all people to project themselves into the work. These are mirrors. I believe art is a mirror, and we need mirrors to see ourselves, to know who we are. These are people looking into mirrors, looking at themselves. Perhaps they're looking at another person, but they are looking, searching for recognition, for spaces to be themselves, to be and be seen, to know and to acknowledge who they really are. Along with this symbolic figuration, there are visual references to divergent ideas from physics, neurology, biology, philosophy, consciousness studies, linguistics. And I also examine pure abstraction. I'm deeply interested in paradox, in how abstraction is simultaneously both free of reference and contains multiple levels of subjective and objective meaning, metaphors, narratives, all at the same time. These works contain multi-layered, multi-levular spaces with multiple layers of meaning. The people in these works, as in our real lives, exist in a vibrant, organic, infinite universe that's alive with energy, emotion, natural forms, light, and life. To build these paintings, I hand monotype. I pour paint onto a glass surface, glass panel, and I print from one panel to another. And then those dry, and then I flip them over and I do the same thing on the other side. These panels are then stacked together. Light is naturally coursing through the surfaces of these paintings. Light becomes a formal element in the paintings. So naturally, I've been experimenting with how to use electric light as a medium. I had made a number of large-scale lightbox paintings for private commissions back in the early aughts, before the most debilitating effects of my drug addiction took over my life. But really what I always envisioned was paintings with lights embedded in the frames, edge-lit slabs of glass, forcing the light to flow through the interior of the paintings. Luminous glass paintings that could hang on a wall or be a wall, or could be installed as a window or a ceiling. I dreamed of finding ways to evolve these luminous layered glass techniques, this form, into a luminous glass architecture. I dreamed of public art, architectural public art, built out of these paintings. Addicted to drugs, I could not figure out how to realize this ambition. I could not figure out how to realize these ambitious ideas, to make them real. But clean and sober and sane, in recovery, no longer isolated, no longer suffering from insane, irrational drug delusions that just took over my life, I've finally been able to. I know that all of us here share in a core belief in the power of art, in its ability, its natural ability to challenge ourselves, to challenge one another, to challenge toxic attitudes and beliefs and dysfunctional cultural structures, to inspire change, to inspire us to do the hard work to change ourselves and our world, to challenge the darkest sides of our humanity that produce war and racism, sexism, classicism, colonialism, imperialism, ecocide, pollution, oppression, addiction. For centuries, we've so often chosen to act out what can only be described as blatantly negative, so obviously toxic, essentially suicidal behaviors. Sound familiar? Addiction. Addiction. Addictions to sets of choices that disrupt our best efforts, our hopes, our shared dreams, our desires to build communities that will blossom and thrive, not merely get by, not merely survive, not merely just make it through another season, but thrive. In Pulitzer Prize-winning science journalist Ed Young's writings about the man-made climate crisis, he talks about how our relationship to nature depends on our collective decisions, community, and about how the most essential need is for us all to engage in a radical introspection, to know ourselves. Collective decisions and radical introspection, to choose to know ourselves, our communities, our cultures, our collective responsibilities to nature, to each other, to ourselves. For over 2 decades, I have had this quixotic, ambitious dream to make large-scale, solar-powered, luminous layered glass paintings as an architectural form of socially engaged public art. And this is it, a public space for communal engagement. The Monroe Park Luminous Community Center. I believe that the Luminous Community Center can be a real social catalyst. It can offer the community a physical place, a special space to come together face to face, to choose to work towards being more connected, less divided, to heal social wounds, to focus on answers, to celebrate and learn from one another. A place where people can nurture that necessary shared desire we all have to create more powerful communities for ourselves, for our friends, our families, for everyone. In the darkest, most insane, unreal, surreal moments in my life, this was the vision, the singular dream that kept me going. A longing to connect, to reconnect, to be able to give back somehow, someday. I was as low as, my life was as low as it could possibly be, but I knew I had some grand ideas and dreams. Homeless, I dreamed of having a home. But I also dreamed of making a shared safe space for people to co-create a better world, day and night, coming together across class, race, gender, and age, even especially across the political divide. Public art can allow us to find common ground and common cause, to form coalitions, build solidarity, form deeper, more authentic human connections in communities, our communities, that have been divided, kept separated by decades, centuries of toxic behaviors and toxic ideas that we've allowed to dominate and subvert our shared personal and social realities. Because no matter what choices we make, because no matter what choices we choose, one simple fact is indisputable. Addiction and homelessness, they're not options for us, for our species. We cannot afford those options. A decade ago, I was lost, but I found a way out, recovery. And we have to have the courage to choose to shine that light, the light of recovery, into the darkest corners of our individual and collective lives, on the choices that we have made and on the choices that we're going to be making. I'm not a psychologist or a doctor, and I don't have a PhD or a master's degree. But after more than 4 decades singularly dedicated to art, to being an artist, I know that art can help us to save us from ourselves. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very much. Shall we?
Shall we?
Okay.
Oh. Oh.
Cheers.
We had a really good conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I feel like we might have talked through so many of these things. So I'm trying to go back in my mind and sort of revisit some of the exciting points, and then just thinking about some questions I had from watching today. Can you imagine when you were in the depths of your struggles, what something like this would have meant to you if you were to encounter it?
Well, I have an overactive imagination, as I guess you probably can imagine. And while my creativity was deeply diminished, I had stopped making art. You know, my mom recently was telling me an interesting thing about how she saw my art get darker and darker and less full of life and less connected to people and more just confusing. And that she has been really happy to see the art I made since I got into recovery just turn that around entirely. And I think of that partly to answer your question, because I remember thinking, you know, I'd been an artist, like I said, I'd been an artist my whole life before that. Like, I couldn't go down that way. You know, I couldn't let my life be destroyed. It was destroyed. I mean, it's hard to, I find it hard to even realize how awful things were. You know, how truly grotesque it was, how difficult it was. But I saw that I had to somehow figure out how to make these dreams that I had had before happen. So short answer to long answer, short question, that yes, I did have that vision still like kind of alive, but the idea that it could ever get realized, and I mean even just one painting, much less something as dramatic as this. Like,
I'm even thinking of like these like pivotal moments in our life when the right thing appears in front of us at the right time, and even just like, I sort of feel like this might be like a vision from that time of like what you needed or something.
Absolutely.
Like that.
No, absolutely. I've told people that when I was here at VCU, I worked as an Uber and Lyft driver, and I would drive around the park, and I would have this vision. And, even then I was only, 3 or 4 years into my recovery. And it was still a struggle, real struggle. And so being connected to the vision. And again, it's not just like this super ambitious idea, but even to, getting a studio and making work. And I was telling you before about like really having a rigorous art practice, making a cohesive body of work, which I think all artists work towards and struggle to achieve. And I had really, part of why I was telling Carmenita earlier, like part of why I wanted to come back to school. I went to school in '87, then I was at another school in '97, and then 20 years later, finally came back to finish my degree, was that I knew I had to figure out how to transform my practice. And VCU, really, truly did the trick. So, yeah. So like being in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Cool. Could you talk a little bit about some of the programming you foresee happening in this space?
Well, yes, absolutely. I believe that people from all across the city, people from all across the state, the world even, can come together in ways that, one of the things I've been saying is, if you want to do sports, you go to a sports stadium. If you want to do, we have event spaces or places where people go to do particular things. But what we don't really have in our culture is spaces that are specifically geared towards producing social change. We have demonstrations, and we force the community, we force the cities, to allow us to demonstrate, and there's a lot of difficulties in many cities. Obviously, we know the history of that, but we don't really have spaces that are particularly focused on that, and I envision this as being one of those spaces. And obviously, there's other kinds of events that bring people together. It's not just for social change, but that's my ideal for how this can operate. And that means really bringing people from all over parts of the city and activating downtown in a way that that happens, I think, but that should happen more and more. I think the only way we're going to heal these divisions is literally by getting in the room and doing stuff. And that means people choosing to do that, and if you don't have a space to do it, how do you do it? You can't heal from addiction unless you get in a room with this is what the 12-step program of AA. Literally, I was on the streets, and then all of a sudden I'm in a room with a bunch of addicts, and I had what they call, it was like a spiritual awakening. It really was. I literally was like, oh my God, I had never heard about AA or thought about AA. And there I was in this room with these people, and within 3 days of talking about addiction and sharing the details of the 12-step program, I was like, oh my God, I'm not like a follower, I'm a bit of a contrarian or whatever, but I was like, wow, like that is real. I've read all the psychology, I'm a voracious reader, I've read all the different self-help books. I was raised by radical hippies who had all the self-help books of the 70s and the spirituality and all that stuff. And honestly, I got to say that the AA and the 12-step programs, like this incredible personal way of transforming your life, but then also as a group and bringing people together. So I really feel strongly that it's about creating a space where people come together and work together to do change. Yeah.
Cool. Is there anyone out in the audience who has a question for Nikolas?
How do you envision this space? As just small individuals who make choices like to drive a car, buy plastic, bottle of water, how can the climate change issue feel so big as an individual? I don't know, how can I help if I go to this space and try to talk to people? how can I help this problem?
Yeah.
It seems insurmountable.
I get it. So what was amazing at the event in Boston, so that was like hundreds of people, all these top scientists, and I said that phrase in the talk about, oh, it's really simple. I was being a little bit sarcastic, because of course it's not that simple. But reality is we can achieve the kinds of changes that can affect long-term environmental changes, whether it's recycling, where we each do a little part, and that thing adds up and adds up and adds up. I just know that if we don't do things, we know what's going to happen. There's that, I don't know, there's like that thing with the four squares where it's like, if you do this, yes, if you don't do that, if you do, it's if we don't do these things, we know exactly what will happen, but we have to start doing these things. And so, this will be solar powered, and the community, the group of people that will come together, people that I've already spoken with that are excited about being part of the management of this organization, of the organization that will manage it. I've been talking about creating sort of like not a constitution, but like a list of the sort of important, the ethos behind the project, right? And that there will be an endowment that will work towards long-term planning, and so that it's reaching out to Food Not Bombs. It's reaching out to the kind of people that I met at the TED Talk in Boston. There's so many people doing amazing work. And again, that's part of why that TED Talk occurred, was like, we've got to get those people in the one room, and I think we'll be surprised by how many people out there are absolutely committed to finding answers, and incredibly smart people are coming up with really interesting ways to fix things. That's what I hope.
I wanted to say I love how inventive you are with the concept of a canvas. And alongside that, what classes did you take at VCU that made you feel like you were able to really imagine this idea, and also reaffirm these ideas that you had in your, in your philosophy in your life as well?
Right on. That's a beautiful question. Holly Morrison was really influential teacher here. I don't know if she's teaching now or not. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So hugely influential teacher for me. She's deadly serious lady. Okay. And for good reason. Like, she's really rigorous and has an incredibly rich knowledge of art history and contemporary art, and the different communities in different cities, and the kinds of art they're making, and kind of how those different groups have evolved. And she really helped. Gregory Volk isn't here right now, but he was an incredible influence. Again, just I knew a lot about art history. I was 50 years old when I came here, so I really knew quite a lot about art history, and I was super surprised at how often I would be like, wow, I did not know that. I did not see that. I did not connect those dots. So printmaking was something I had been really interested in, but had never really dived into. And so, because what I really do now is I'm a printmaker. I mean, these I call them paintings, but they are literally all print. Literally every single bit of painted information is a print. And so, and I guess I didn't say this, but I think this will help answer the questions. Like, when I got to San Francisco, I moved to San Francisco. I had a job in an art handling company there after I graduated, and I got a studio. And the very first thing I said to myself was, I'm going to come up with 5 rules, and I'm literally not going to deviate from those 5 rules. I'm just going to make art using those 5 rules, and it's turned out to be really a powerful way of working. And I'm not sure who here told me that, or how or maybe I saw it with the way other people were working, but it certainly came from being here. It certainly came from the painting and printmaking department. You know, I know that, you know, Noah Simbliss is also really good, big influence as well.
I love that you give the work credit as a print rather because they feel like big paintings. With
They
paint
do.
on the
They
surface,
really,
but, But
yeah.
to me, the print shop, when the print shop's running well, it is a community.
Yes,
You
exactly.
are responsible for
Yeah.
the cleanliness and the care of all these things, and you often work in a team.
Well, and as a
And that's-
painter, you're usually in your studio by yourself
Yeah.
doing your thing. But a print studio is like people are constantly working together, and there's the technical side, and they're like, oh, you know, actually this does this, and oh, you should learn, and I was doing that before. And so there's a real dialogue that I think is gorgeous. I don't know if the litho studio is up and running, but I wish it
Yes,
was.
it is.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Right on. Because it wasn't when I was.
Things up and down.
Yes, exactly.
There's like a, oh good Lord, there's a meme or whatever you want to say about like the idea of tortured artists and misery and creation being like inextricably linked and et cetera. And having gone through your life experience, what do you think about that? You know what I mean? Like, how do you feel about what you've gone through and whether that led you to where you are or you had some pathway to that anyway? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, let's just all understand that's my brother. Very sarcastic individual. But yeah, Bjorn, if I could go back, you know, you can't go back and change things, you know, but if I could go back, I would not choose the path. Okay, I would be like, no, thank you. No, that's not what I would like to do, you know, because it was, I mean, you know, I won't swear. I won't use inappropriate language, but it was a nightmare. And I mean, yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it's truly beautiful. In the most true sense of that word, if the horror that I experienced, just the dumb, horrible stuff that I experienced transforms into a lesson I can share with anyone. Like, you know, I mean, that's one of the great things about AA. It's like you're in a room and you're sitting next to somebody. I mean, and I've said this before, they may literally be someone who had one beer and is like, oh my God, if I have another beer, life's gonna be, I mean, I've met people like that. And then I met people who were like, you know, heroin addicts who were gonna OD. That level, there's a whole scale. But the point is that you look at each other and you go like, we can heal this. We can figure this out. Like, it's not gonna be easy, but we can figure it out. And so if the horror that I went through can help someone, then that's what matters. I don't think as an artist, though, yes, to really directly answer your question, I don't think you have to have a tortured life. No, I don't think so. I think that there's an infinite, really, range of ways that people can realize their gift. I mean, art is really a gift. It's like I said in the talk, there's a certain magical, I believe there's a certain magical nature to choosing to transmute materials into these completely unique objects that communicate all sorts of sets of different ideas. And that doesn't have to come from angst necessarily. I mean, life is angst maybe anyways, but you know, yeah.
So Nikolas, your journey has been really inspirational and impressive. But I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your continued education and learning how to make these glass panels in Germany. I mean, really impressive stuff.
So I have an interest. So a lady that I know in LA said, "Oh, do you know this guy named George Bates in New Jersey?" I was like, "No, I don't know a guy named George Bates, New Jersey." And he is a public artist who makes work on glass. So I was like, "Well, I got to talk to the guy." So we get on the phone, and instantly I was like, "Oh my God, we really have a formal connection." And he's like, "I'm going to introduce you to all these public art people, and I'm going to introduce you to these glass people." And I had always been using plexiglass because it's light and it's easy to move. I can move myself. You know, glass is very heavy. But I always knew that, you know, plexiglass is really just a thing that you have because you don't have glass. It's like cheap glass or something. That's the way I thought about it. And so I have been able to plug into and connect with and collaborate with now these incredible glass makers in Germany, the Peters Studios in Paderborn, Germany, who have been an incredible resource. They're like a 100-year-old, family-owned. They're the director's 4th generation. They make all the stained glass for churches throughout Europe. There's about 3 or 4 places in Europe that do that make stained glass for churches. And so I've been learning all these incredible new techniques. You can digitally print glass paint onto glass, and then you kiln fire it. You can spray paint glass paint. You can there's stencils. There's so many different techniques. And I'm just at the beginning of even learning about how to do some of that stuff. But the fact that I've plugged into and discovered this whole world of public art is a whole other, I mean, I didn't even know that, I knew that public art existed, but there is a whole amazing world out there of just incredible projects, huge projects that I think is a part of the art world that isn't advertised as much, isn't like, in a way, it's almost interesting. People make these huge projects, and instead of being worried about like getting on the cover of art in America, they just are happy that that's what they're doing.
We've got time for one more question. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. One is, who would have access to this?
Everyone.
Okay. How would they get, I'm going to ask all 3 questions. Then
Okay.
Who would have access? How would you get access to this if you lived in Richmond and wanted to do? And 3, could you be a little more specific on the specific uses
Yes.
that you envision for this, how it could be used?
All right. Thank you, Dick. So everyone, this is for everyone. There will be the plan is to have a public-private partnership, and that is for the ongoing programming of the Luminous Community Center. So there could be 200 more events a year, sometimes maybe more than one a day. And it could be weddings and dance performances and musical performances. It's going to have screens, 20-foot by 40-foot screens on the sides and on the back. So that's 3 of them that can come down. And then in the center of the roof is going to be 3 of the highest end projectors, like this projector, that project onto that screen. So there can be complex video art presentations. There can be film showings. There can be holiday celebrations, graduations. There can be meetings, community meetings. There could be a flea market. There could be farmers markets. There could be a book fair. There could be. I mean, it's an event space that can encompass. It opens up as the 2 sides and the front. The doors open, so it becomes an open air pavilion. So there's many configurations that the space can be configured into, thus to allow for different kinds of events. And the real point, like I was saying before, about sort of an ethos or a constitution, or I keep trying to, what the right word is, a set of...
Mission statement?
Mission statement, thank you. Is to create not just an endowment, but create a foundation, create an organization that sticks to outreach, that sticks to connecting to different groups, whether they are religious or social or cultural or educational, connecting to museums, connecting to schools. There's a lot. I think there's a lot of people that will come up with things that I can't even think of, that will be powerful ways of using the space to do what I'm talking about, which is bring people together. Yeah. Does that get to some of what you're...
Yeah, I mean, also that it would be local.
Well, of course, it's all about local, yes. Oh yeah, it's all about local. Yes, absolutely.
Nicholas, we have one question from our
Oh, okay,
virtual
okay.
audience.
Oh, very cool.
And this attendee would like to know what the 5 studio rules are.
That's
your
pretty good.
secrets.
Okay, all right. So one rule is that when as I described before, I pour paint. So I'm maybe drawing a face, or I'm making kind of a area of texture. Sometimes it's purely abstract. Sometimes there's kind of some sense of it as a geometry, or some sense of it as a thing that's interacting with some other layer that I perceive is going to happen in the work. And then I print from one to the other. So one rule is to only do one motion, one action per surface. That way, when I go and stack the works, there's this natural, this is my own totally surreal particular way of thinking about it. It's like each action, it's almost like choreography, that if I make this one, it's like there's like a Zen, almost Japanese sense to it. Like if I make one action, I want that action I want its life, its energy to be preserved. I don't want it to get sort of distracted by a bunch of other stuff. So that's where that rule comes from. Another rule is to stick to this specific, what I call double inverted portraits, where because of the printmaking process, you get what basically kind of a horizontal inversion, which I refer to as like somehow like the Janus face, the Roman god of past, present, and future. But to stick to using that, or breaking the rule and switching it, right? So that people are looking at each other as opposed to looking away, or the person is looking away or looking. I like 4 colors, that's it. Like 3 colors generally, that's it. Some kind of thing about like, we have this, the rainbow is a very small range of colors. Try to stick within a very short range of colors. I mean, these aren't the most exciting rules, but they are rules. And so everything's basically either a diptych, because the printmaking process produces multiples, right? I've tried doing I'll do 3 or 4. It doesn't quite do it. So I've just found that doing the diptychs, and then I love the diptych format. It just becomes, everything's a square. I do not do anything except squares. There's a couple other rules. They're a little bit, like I said, very subjective, but what I've discovered, and as I sort of said already, but what I've discovered is that by sticking to them, I've been able to, so like we're giving a presentation dinner tomorrow about the Luminous Community Center. And I made this video of 260 images of work that I've made in this last 3 or 4 years. So this this simple set of rules has produced a really dramatic amount of work, and all the work seems to have a real different energy, but also be of a piece. So,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.